Hello everyone, it's Walker here with the fourth video in the metaphysics part. Today we're going to be talking about substances and accidents, but to quickly recap, in the last video we discussed on potentiality and actuality, or potency and act. This is an Aristotelian philosophy that explains how things change, and St. Thomas Aquinas implemented that in his studies, and the idea of potentiality and actuality, which is where he came up with the idea of actus purus, and we'll talk about that later on. But the book we're referencing for this series, as always, is The One and the Many, a Contemporary Thomistic Metaphysics by Father Noah Clarke, or Norris Clarke. I think I've said Noah in the past. It is Norris. I apologize for that. But great book. It's a beginner level course, so just stay with me and let's make this happen. So to recap, potentiality and actuality, a potential is your ability to become something else, a seed into a tree, metal into rust, or decay, a body into decay, or a baby into an adult. I have the potential to grow a beard, or the potentiality to gain weight. But the actuality is me as my essence or my being, because that's all metaphysics is being qua being, it's being as being, or the study of being. So I am me, Walker. I will always be me, Walker, even if I gain weight, lose weight, grow a beard, shave my beard, trim it, dye it, it doesn't matter. I am Walker, and you cannot change that. And so when we look at actuality and potentiality, that's what we're discussing. However, today we're going to go one step further into actuality and potentiality, into substances and accidents, and we're going to explain what is a substance and what is accidents, and we're going to touch on hylomorphism in this discussion. So in short, change is the actualization of potential. But to bring that into a new insight, when we look at change and we understand the actualization of potential, we must ask ourselves, what exactly is changing? I could do thought processes or thought experiments where I ask about changing your hair, gaining weight, whatever, but I've already explained that you will remain you even if you change these things. But clearly something about the thing has changed, and that's what we need to remember. There is a physical change that is occurring to the substance or the being, and we have to know what that is. A good way to understand this is to think about how many things can change about a thing. And in metaphysics, there's a lot of circular wording. So, because we don't use because you have to be careful using words like being and thing and substance, because they have very specific meanings. While in modern day English, these are pretty generic terms that can cover a broad range of things. So you're going to hear me use a lot of words that sound circular. And when I was going through some of this course, and I'm still learning, of course, but as I learn, one of the things I learned was that I had trouble understanding my professor, because he would use a lot of almost like circular talk, because at a young age we're taught you cannot define something while using the word in the definition. It's just not a good idea to do, because you don't actually define the object. But in metaphysics we tend to use a lot of the circular talk but not circular arguments. That's a different thing, of course. Okay, so let's focus on me. How many things can change on me, or you watching this video? So right now, in this moment, what can change? I mean, dyeing your hair might take some time, but let's say I'm sitting by a window and I open my curtains and I get a sunburn. That can change my skin, my appearance. I could stand up, so I'm changing from sitting down to standing. I can sit back down. I can change my clothes, so my clothes are not in essence of me, as in they're not formed into my being, but they're a part of my being because I carry them, I wear them, and so that is a change that occurs. I can drink an energy drink, for example, not sponsored, some cover in the label, but I can drink this, and then I would suddenly now change a component of my body that was once empty and now has liquid in it. And you are constantly changing, not to go too deep into Heraclitus's idea of flux, but you are constantly getting older. You're breathing, you're blinking, you're swallowing, you're producing saliva. Your body is flowing with blood into your arteries and veins, and you're oxygenating your blood. And So there's a constant change inside of your body. And we could probably talk about this forever. I mean, you can name a billion different things that change. So, but one of the things we must know is none of these destroy what makes you the person that you are. So getting a sunburn or breathing or changing clothes or whatever, you're not destroying who you are. You remain the same individual despite those changes. And so this is where the Parmenides versus Heraclitus argument comes in, because you have two extremes, everything's the same or everything changes, but you need a way to explain both of those occurring at the same time, and that's the one and the many. So how can something change but remain itself at the same time? That's the question I want you to ask yourself before we go any further. So go ahead and pause the video. If you want to leave a comment, and let's discuss. But how can something change and remain itself? To answer this first, we're going to look at substances. So what is a substance? A substance is the being. It is the thing that makes you what you are. So when I look at myself or you look at yourself, it is the very essence of who I am as an individual. Though my appearance may change, my thoughts, my logic, my appearance, not my appearance, but my consciousness, my understanding of this is the same. I am here, I am me. And that will not change no matter if I get a sunburn or if I lose my limb, if I dye my hair, gain weight, lose weight. I am me. Now, my thought processes can change. The way that I perceive reality could change, but I am still me. So in short, a substance is an individual thing or an individual being. It could be a human being, a dog, it could be a tree, a chair, or a rock. It doesn't have to have intelligence. It does not have to have a thought process. It can be a non-animate object. So a rock, a desk, a tree, or whatever, because it is that thing. Now, when we look at like man-made objects, it gets a little weird, because the question is this desk the desk, or is the essence or the substance of it the tree that made the desk? And we get into some other thought processes. But to keep it simple, let's focus on natural objects. So like trees, rocks, plants, you, me, beings, fish, snakes, insects, those things are themselves. They exist in unified realities. They're not features of something else. And so that's where I was getting at with the desk, is they're not a feature of something else. They don't exist as part of other things. They are the underlying subjects that possess properties. You can say a substance is a thing that has characteristics. So then we can talk about accidents. And what are accidents? Well, to put it simply, accidents are things that change within or outside of the substance that directly influence what appears to be us. So, for example, my skin, I'm a ginger, I'm red hair, freckles, pale skin. I could get a sunburn. That is an accidental. I may tan, or you may tan, but you are not changing your substance of who you are, but the accidental of your appearance is changing. By definition, accidents are the characteristics or properties that belong to a substance. These are features that can change while the substance remains what it is. And again, these examples include color, size, texture, feel, touch, things like that. They're the physical properties. And we can see these accidentals everywhere, especially when we start to pay attention to them. Go out town in public, go to the grocery store, whatever, and you'll notice the accidentals you can even look at the color of fruit or vegetables and notice they vary and change in color. And that's due to when they were picked off the branch and their ripeness and the accidental of that property. You can look at people and see, like, do they have a scar? Do they have a tattoo? A tattoo would be an accidental. We can look at these various aspects of reality around us and see that these are accidents or accidentals. So then we have to ask, why does this matter? So if every change destroyed the substance itself, then nothing would persist. And so that's what we have to understand, is that if my accidentals changed who I am as my substance, then I would never persist to be me, and there would be no persistence of anything, because everything would constantly change, and you would get into Heraclitus flux. And this would go so deep that every time a tree lost its leaf, it would become a new tree. I mean, we shed skin cells. That's a tongue twister for me. We shed skin cells every day, all day. And when we do this, we would become something else if our substance did not remain the same. So there's an issue with flux. How we know that that's wrong is because that's not how reality is perceived to us. If now we knew and we could perceive that people change their very essence, and you would have to experience it firsthand, that if I got a tattoo, I'm different, then you would know that flux, everything changes constantly and your substance does not persist throughout the accidentals. But we know that even if you get a tan, even if you lose a limb, even if you lose a tooth, like your baby teeth when you're growing up or one as an adult, if you dye your hair, if you gain weight, you remain you. You don't change. And you know this because you perceive reality almost the same way. I mean, obviously there's differences in how we perceive, but what I'm talking about more is the consciousness of understanding who you are as a being and your memories of your life from then till now. It persists throughout all the accidentals that you've had throughout your life. So we can look at this and say that substance explains identity. And that's the key word, is identity. Your identity is your substance, while your accidentals are your change. So substance, identity, accidents explains change. So as I said in our last video, we talked about act and potency. How do we connect substances and accidents to act and potency? I think it's pretty easy to see for myself. Now, some people may not see the immediate connection, but we have to understand potentiality is the ability to change. It's the ability to become something, while your actuality is your substance. It is your identity. So when something changes, a potential becomes actual. But that change affects the accidents of the thing rather than the substance. Some examples of this is water becoming hot, a tree growing taller, or a person learning a new skill like you're doing right now with this metaphysics course. These changes involve new actualities, but the underlying substance remains the same. And this allows change to happen without destroying the identity. There are cases, however, where the substance can change. So earlier I talked about desk, so things that are not natural in nature. These are man-made objects, okay? So there is a substance that occurs and changes itself because it's such a dramatic shift. And so we can look at situations where substance changes. When wood burns and it becomes ash, it is a new substance. The original substance is destroyed. So the grain of wood that forms into this block of a plank, a log, whatever it is destroyed. And the only thing left is the ash. And therefore, a new substance comes into existence. So in that case, we do not simply say that the wood changed temperature. Now, the temperature of the wood could be an accidental during that change, but it does not become the actuality of what it is. The wood itself becomes ash, therefore the substance is destroyed. And so there's two different types of change that classical metaphysics talks about, and one is accidental change and the other is substantial change. Accidental change is where the substance remains, so like a tan, sunburns, etc. A substantial change is where the substance itself is replaced, and that would be a desk, because the desk is a new substance. Even though the wood remains intact, it was changed so dramatically and added to a new form to become a new substance. Later on in philosophy and theology, these concepts of substantial and accidental change are going to become a lot more important, and so we're not going to dive super deep into them right now, but we are going to get the fundamentals, because in other courses later on, I will need to explain these deeper. But for reference, and just a quick note for fun, in later Christian theology, these accidental and substantial changes become very important to like the centralization of Christianity. And we can look at things like the Eucharist, for example, where the church teaches that the substance of the bread and wine becomes the body and blood of Christ, and that the accidents remain the same. So that's insane to think about, because we typically teach that accidents change while substance remains. But in this situation, the accident actually actually remains the same and the substance changes. And while I'm doing this course, it's kind of funny because Hammer of Heretics, one of my friends and a great person to do videos, has released a video on transubstantiation, or a series on transubstantiation. So I'm going to try to remember to leave a link to that in my description below. So I highly encourage you to go check that out. And it's funny because we both released a metaphysics video on the same day without discussing it to each other, and it was along the same lines of things. So it's just, great minds think alike kind of thing. But the doctrine of the Eucharist is called transubstantiation, and again, I don't need to harp on that too much in this course. That's a different course entirely. If you really want to learn a lot about it, go check out Hammer of Heretics series, and I may cover a series later on down the road. But right now, let's focus on Thomistic Metaphysics. So to summarize this video in the series, we're going to tell you that substance is the underlying reality that exists itself. It is your identity. While an accident is a feature that exists in a substance and can change without destroying it, but it can destroy it, because there's two different types of changes. And this distinction helps us explain how things can remain themselves while undergoing many changes. In the next episode, we are going to dive deeper into substance itself, and we're going to look at what makes a substance a substance. We're going to do that by explaining the difference between form and matter, and this is going to dive into an Aristotle idea called hylomorphism. I said we would talk about it in this video, but we just don't have time, and honestly, it's really a video for itself. Because once we fully understand what substances are, we can then ask, what are substances made of? Thanks for watching, guys. If you made it this far, please leave a like and comment on the video, and check out the next video in the series as it comes out. As of right now, we're releasing one every week. Eventually, they're all going to be out, but I have no clue how many we're releasing. We're just going to do it until we teach as much as we can teach. Until next time, God bless.